Hi everyone, welcome back, and today I will be showing you step by step how to make these super cute booties. I've done these in a size 4 and they should fit roughly a UK 4 to 6, but I'll leave instructions below on how to make them bigger or smaller. So to start off, we want to make a magic ring with our 3 strips of yarn. So the way I do this is I have the end of the yarn to the right, and on my finger I lay it over towards the back, and then I wrap it round 2 more times, so I've got a total of 3 across my finger, and my hook goes under all 3. It pulls the furthest one under as a loop, and I'm just going to chain 1 to secure it for my magic ring. And then you can pull it off your finger. So for the first round I'm going to do another chain, so I've got 2 in total, and then into this ring here I'm going to do 10 double crochets. Make sure that you don't lose any of your 3 strands of yarn. Once you've completed your 10, find the top of your first one here, and we're just going to put our hook through the 2 top loops that we have here, and then we're going to slip stitch through to join, and then you'll have your 3 strands on the back from your magic loop. We're going to pull that tight, and it closes our first round. So for round 2 I'm going to chain 2 again, and this time we're going to do 2 double crochets into each stitch, so we'll end up with 20 in total. I'm going to do mine here into this hole that is below our chain 2. This just means that as you increase round, you won't see the join moving as you add more rows. It does mean we end up with a stitch left at the end, but that is absolutely fine. So that's 2 in the 10 stitches to make 20. Like I said, that last stitch there will be left unworked because we went into the same one as the chain. And then as before, we're going to put our hook through the loops at the top of that first stitch and then slip through to join. If you found that your middle circle has become a little bit loose, just keep making sure you just keep it tight on there, and then you won't get your gap, and when you say the ends at the end, that will stop that happening anyway. So now we're up to 20 stitches. Our next 4 rounds are going to be the same. We're going to chain 2 and then single crochet in each stitch, so you end up with 20. Again, I'm going to go into the hole below my chain 2 instead of going this one, because it just means we'll avoid seeing where the joins are. As you can see, working with these large balls of yarn, they can be a little bit unruly to get the yarn to roll off nicely. So you can see I keep having to give them a big tug to be able to keep going. So once you've completed those 4 rows of 20 double crochets round, we should now have 6 rows in total, including that bottom circle. So for our next row, we're going to start by doing 15 double crochets, starting again with our chain 2 and then working into the same hole underneath. So once we've done 15, we're then going to do a half double crochet in the next stitch, 3 single crochets, and then a half double crochet again, and then we're going to join our row. So we're going to chain 2 again, and then we're going to do 15 double crochets. So once we've done our 15 double crochets, we're no longer now going to be working in the round. We're now going to be chaining and turning back on ourselves. So we're still chaining 2 like before, but this time we're going to turn our work, so we're going back the other way. And as we're no longer working in the round, this time I'm not going into the hole that is below my chain. I'm going to go into the next one, and we're going to do 15 across again. So when you've done 14 and you're thinking where's the 15th go, it might not be obvious because it's not an obvious loop, because we're going into the top of the previous row's chain 2, which is actually this one here. So you can see stitch 14 goes into that loop and stitch 15 will go under these 2 here. So once you've hooked around your yarn, make sure you go in under those 2 loops there, which can be a bit trickier to see, to complete stitch number 15. So we're going to do the same thing again, chain 2, turn 15 across, and we're going to do that a total of 3 more times. So again, missing the stitch that's below the chain 2 and going into the next one. And again for stitch 15 we're going into the top of our chain 2 again, so it will be the 2 loops on the side that don't necessarily look obvious as your next stitch space. So once completed that, we should have 5 rows of 15 going back and forth. So we've started the opening for our foot, and then at the last row we're going to do up the shoe before we create the ankle. So we're going to chain 2 again as before, skipping again the hole that's beneath the chain. We're going to do 6 double crochets. Once we've completed those 6, we're going to double crochet the next 3 together. So we're going to yarn over, through, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, but instead of finishing that stitch off, we're going to do the same thing again 2 more times. So once you've done that, those half stitches in those 3, we should end up with 4 loops on your hook, and then we're going to yarn over and pull through all of them. So that's our double crochet 3 together, and then we're going to do 6 more double crochets. And that 6th stitch again is going to be in that slightly hidden top of your chain 2. Once you've completed that, what we're going to do is we're going to fold the back together, and we're looking again for the top of that chain 2. So we're going to, keeping our hook in that loop, we're going to put our hook through the top of that chain 2 like we would if we were creating a stitch at the end, and then we're going to yarn over and pull through that hole in the loop. So we've slip stitched the back of the shoe together. So you will end up with a hole here on the back, and then a hole here, which is where your foot will go in, and we'll close this one up at the end. And then once you've done that slip, we're just going to do a chain 1. So if you don't want an ankle cuff for your boot, you can stop here and then sew up the back with a wool needle. If not, we're going to make the cuff. So for this, what we're going to do is we're going to single crochet around the hole. For me, it's usually about 26 stitches. I'll see what I get today, but it will depend on how close together you put them. Just make sure they're evenly spread. The exact number doesn't matter, and if you have too many, you may end up with an ankle that's too loose. But if that happened, you can always pull this bit out and do less stitches. So for my first single crochet, so I don't get a line where I do my joins, I'm going to go in here underneath my chain. And then what I'm going to do is in each stitch, because we are on the side of a row, so there's not going to be the 2 loops like there would if we were crocheting on top of ourselves, I'm going to look in each side of the stitch and just make sure that I still go through 2 loops of the side of a double crochet, and I still have 1 underneath my hook as I go round. So I've ended up with 10 single crochets down that side, and then when we come along this front bit, you'll discover we've got the loops as if we were going back on ourselves, because that's where those are the 5 stitches that we stopped and left open when we started doing the back of the shoe. So we'll crochet through these as normal. And then once you've crocheted through those, we're going to go back up this side as well, going through the top loops. As you can see, some of them are a little bit harder than others when you're working through the side to make sure you end up with 2 on top and one of the places a stitch on the bottom. But just be patient and just look, and you will find where it needs to go. So I've ended up with 26 single crochets around the top there, which is roughly what I expected. And then when I've done my last one, I'm going to join with that slip stitch to my first single crochet as so. So we've now got the top opening for the shoe. I'm going to chain 2, and I'm now going to crochet around 26 stitches 4 times, joining at the top of each one to create the top of my shoe. And as when we were working this bottom bit in the round, I'm again going to go into the hole underneath the chain 2 so we don't get a visible line where we join. just got a knot there in my yarn from where I've been pulling it out. Don't worry if that happens, just untie it. And it's just where it's looped around itself, and carry on. So I've done my 26 stitches round, same as before, through the top of the first one and just pull through to join, chain 2 and repeat. So once you've done your 4 rows round, we have almost finished our booty now. We just need to finish off the top and then sew up the back of the heel. So leaving your hook in the shoe, we need to cut off a tail. I like to work out roughly how long, because I'm not going to cut off my tail short, sew it in, and then join another piece to sew this up. I'm going to use the same tail. So I like to run it down the back of the shoe, so it is at least as long as the back of the shoe, and then almost double that before I cut it off, so I know that I have a nice long tail to work with to sew in my ends. And all I'm going to do to finish at the top here, I'm going to put my yarn over and pull it through to seal off that top stitch. So the crocheting part of making our boot is now done. So we now need to just finish off by sewing up this hole. So I've got here just a plastic needle. I quite like working with these because they're not sharp, they're plastic, they're not metal, you can't stab yourself with them. And remember, even if you are using a metal one, you need to make sure you're using a blunt wool darning needle so you don't poke holes through the fibres. So to thread my needle, I will hold my 3 over, wrap them over the top. So I've got the eye facing me, so the thinnest part is at the top. I pull down and squeeze along that, so I've got all 3 folded in, and then I'll put the eye of the needle over the top, push, and then I can pull them through. And that is the easiest way I've found of threading my needle, whether I'm using 1 strand of yarn or 3 or 5. Obviously, depending how many you're using will depend how easy that is with how big the eye of your needle is. As you can see, this one is pretty big, and it's another reason why I like these. So now all we're going to do is just quickly turn our boot inside out. I'm not going to turn the toes all the way through, as we're not working on that bit, but we need to be able to seal up the back of our heel. So first up, what we need to do is we need to run our yarn through our stitches down to where the gap is. So I like to go not through obviously the hole that we've pulled up through, I go through next to that, so our tail disappears into the tops of those stitches, and then I will just feed it under the different loops, working down the back of the shoe to bring it down to where I need it to be. And I like to go in a few different directions just to make sure we keep it tight, and it's unlikely that it's going to somehow manage to unravel itself in any way. And you can see I'm sort of having to feel, because as we've got so many strands of wool, sometimes I'll push through and I'll come up against something, but having this blunt needle, you can feel against it and make sure you're not damaging any of the yarn that we've used. So once you've fed it through and we're at the top of our gap, fold your shoe over so it's in half and we're lining up the tops of the stitches that we did in the previous rows. So all I'm going to do from here is I have the top of the stitch here. Like I would with a crochet hook, I'm going to go under those 2 loops, and I'm going to see where the one is on the other side, and I'm going to feed my needle through that and that's gone through those two. I'm then not going to go back on myself, I'm going to come over the top, and then I'm going to do the same again with the next pair. Pull tight, and I'm going to repeat that down the back of the shoe, going through each pair of loops until I get to the bottom. For this last one that I've gone through, instead of pulling it tight straight away, I'm then going to feed my needle up the middle of it before I pull tight, as that then pulls tight over this tail we've still got left. And if I just turn back through to show you, you can see we've now got a nice invisible join up the back of our shoe where there used to be that hole. So once we've done that and we've pulled that tight, we need to just get rid of our tail. So much like we did before, I'm going to run my needle up through the stitches, making sure to feed them through and feeling that I'm not forcing my way through any of the yarns. One way, and then I'm going to go back the other way. As my tails are now shorter, I'm going to feed my needle part way through first without it being threaded, and once I've fed it almost as far as I can, I'll then use the same technique to rethread my needle to then go back the other way again. You may find that you have to wiggle it a bit and find the ends while they're getting shorter, pull them in, and then I just stretch it out the other way again, because if you've pulled it tight it may not be stretched out. And I'm just going to snip those last ends off. And there is one finished booty. So you can either have it with that up, or sometimes with these tops I like to turn them down as well, so they're a little bit more of a cuff, and that's preference for you. So now we just need to go ahead and make the pair. So second boot is made. Now just to finish off, we need to make sure that we sew in our original ends that we had in the toe. So like when we started, just make sure, pull it tight so it's not gonna pull out and get looser. Thread those ends through your needle. As you can see, if you can't get all three, you can just go back and do one. And then, so for this end, I can see that my ends are coming out to the right, which means they're looping back that way. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to go in the same place where it comes out, but I am going to go back in the direction it's come, but I'm going to do that in the next row round. So I'm just going to feed through the loops, going the opposite way to the way we originally looped the thread. Once you've come around a bit, if you then end up going through these middle bits, which is where our thread is under, that's not a problem. We just don't want to do that initially because we don't want to accidentally unravel the shoe we've just made. And again, because I'd unthreaded my needle, because the tails are getting shorter, I've fed it slightly back through the stitches with the needle and then re-threaded it to be able to pull my ends through. And if you're struggling, just sort of pull them back to the end before then trying to pull through. I'm just going to go around once more. And then feed those last ends through. Those tails are a bit short, so I'm not going to worry about feeding them through any further. I'm just going to snap them off. Turn my boot back the right way. And there we have it. One